Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. Happy Thursday. I am one of your hosts, Sarah Burr.
And I am one of your other hosts who is very happy to be celebrating this Baby Friday evening, J.C. Kenney. And hey, Sarah, I think it's time to get bookish.
There is no better time. And we have a great show this evening. We are delighted to be joined by the wonderful Teresa Trent. Teresa, thank you so much for being here with us today. We can't wait to talk all things mystery and murder with you. And it looks like our viewers are excited as well. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us live here this evening. We have Farmhouse Reader, David Plank, DHB, Claudia, Leah, and Chelsea already chiming in. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for being here. We would love any questions that you have for Teresa as we go through our show. But without further ado, we'd love for you to meet our guest this evening. Teresa, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your books?
All right. Well, my name is Teresa Trent. I am a cozy mystery author. Tonight I'm going to be talking about my Swinging 60s mystery series, but it is actually the third mystery series that I've written. The other two were traditional cozy mysteries. Swinging 60s, obviously, is a historical cozy mystery.
That I can't wait to dive into how you really flesh out the details of the world that your main character, Dot Morgan, lives in. So that's going to be really exciting to hear about. How did you decide to write a historical mystery?
Well, like I said, I had written two series. And they were all present day, but I found myself reading historical novels. And I saw the movie The Help, big influence on me because it was just so funny. Plus, I live in the South, right? And so I just the chocolate pie, the intrigue with the ladies group and everything. I loved that. I also was influenced by 11/22/63, which is way on the other side, but I loved, Stephen King can create a world like nobody else, and I fell in love with that. And when I thought about that specific time period, I had been liking it for a very long time. When you write a cozy mystery, you write this little sealed little town world, and people love it. I love it. And it started with Mayberry. It probably started with Agatha Christie, but I have always been that way. Halloween rolls around. I do not watch Halloween. I watch The Ghost and Mr. Chicken because I want that little town feeling. So when I decided I wanted to write historical, I knew immediately what time period that I wanted to be in. This start with the early 60s. But the series itself, every book is the next year. So 62 is the first book, 63, 64.
Now, how did you and Dot meet? Because she's such a fun, strong, independent character, and she just grabs you off the page. Her commitment to her father and all of the great family that she has. Tell us a little bit about how Dot came to be.
I think that Dot probably started with her job in my mind. Mm-hmm. I thought, I want to have a secretary. I want to have somebody who is in a world but not totally running it, so that she can step back and observe. After that, Dot just started to form in my mind, and you're going to find this out about me. I'm a casting director. I use Hollywood for all of my parts. So Dot to me was Gidget. and that's Sandra Dee. And
Okay.
if you're too young to know who Gidget is, it's way back when. Anyway, so she's the she's the bouncy blonde, looks kind of naive girl, ponytail, that kind of thing, because I wanted her to be a woman who grew up in the 50s, who's now in the 60s, because the books show how women evolved during this time. So in the Twist and Shout Murder, Dot is just adorable at this stage. She's just, I'm going to be a secretary. I'm going to help my father. And so she kind of grew from that. And Dot does grow as the books go on.
The fact that you mentioned about she grew up in the 50s, she's now in the 60s. There was a comment that I believe it was her father made where when Dot is, and to kind of set the scene for our viewers, Dot is joining the local ladies club to really help her father's fledgling city council campaign. And her dad makes a comment that I thought that really captured kind of the spirit of not only the setting, but of who Dot is and how she's kind of growing into what the 60s have for opportunity for women, where he makes a comment about like the women of the ladies club, think they're dealing with the 40s and 50s, but you're a girl of the 60s. And I thought that was a really interesting way to frame kind of the decades, because I don't know if we necessarily think about how people differ from decade to decade right now, and maybe that's because we're living it, but to have that comparison I thought was really clever, and like it really for me like set up like these are the people that Dot is dealing against or having to kind of compete against, and I thought it was a really masterful way to set the scene for us.
Well, thank you very much. I think you can tell decades that people grew up in, even today. I mean, my kids grew up in 90s, 2000s. And they're very different from the kids that are growing up today. And so I really think you can. And Dot is not quite as traditional as they are because she's young. She isn't married yet.
And, that's one of the things I found a little bit interesting is the fact that for 1962, one of the things that for that time period in general was that women had one of three careers. They could be a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse, and obviously there were more, but so many of them were those were the three careers that women had at that time, or get married and be a housewife. And right. So I just think it's really interesting the way you set the scene with her that, yes, she wants to be a secretary, but even within that, you sense that there are bigger things that she wants to go into that she hopes is ahead of her, and that's kind of like, to Sarah's point, why she suggests, hey, Dad, let's do this city council run. There are great things in store for us.
Yes, and she is much more of a cheerleader for her dad than he is for himself, because he's not secure in this role at all. So she's, we can do this, because she's got that young, go get 'em spirit, right? So she's going to go help her out.
Their relationship is so adorable. And when we have spoken with other authors in the past during our episodes, we always love to talk about our sleuths' sidekicks or their best friends, because sometimes sidekick doesn't feel like the right word because it's not big enough for the personalities that they have. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the team that Dot assembles around her for support also, and then when she is kind of out doing her sleuthing.
Okay, well, I'd have to start with Ellie, her cousin. Ellie is in her 30s. She is a talented seamstress, has her own dress shop. She makes a lot of wedding dresses and bridesmaids dresses and things like that. And I absolutely love Ellie. Every time I write Ellie, she takes over the scene, especially in the later books. Oh my gosh, Ellie just is on fire. And so in this book, Ellie is a little frustrated with her boyfriend, who's been her plus one for so long. And she wants to move to the next level, and she's trying to figure out how to do that. Ellie's very passionate. She's very black and white. And so she's like, I got to do this. I got to figure this out. So when they are solving crimes, then Ellie is by her side. But she also has a little voice of reason because she's older than Dot. So she's going to help her out with that. But she's my comedic element in the book many times. Again, if I was going to cast her, she's Carol Burnett. A little taller, but she's Carol Burnett.
Oh, wow.
So she's kind of clunky, but very funny. Then there is Mary Oliva. She is on the police force. She went through the same police academy as the men, but because she's a woman and she's Hispanic, they put her to filing the cases. They don't let her be, anything but another secretary. And so, I really wanted to show that this was indicative of this time, but it also gives Dot that inside loop to investigations, because she may not be able to talk to the detective, but she can look at the case files. I put Officer Jerry in the front, and he goes to lunch, and then they look through the case files. And of course, Jerry's a, number one jerk. So, well, he isn't a jerk, but he's just a man of his times. So, and then I have Ben Dalton, who is the love interest. And he is a reporter from the Camden Courier. He is also young. To me, whenever I do book clubs, they're like, tell us about Ben.
I will say that his introduction, when they meet at the Founders Day banquet, just the way that immediately sparks are flying, I was like, this is gonna go somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, Ben. Yeah. So Ben to me is a young Tom Hanks in a trench coat and a fedora. He's kind of awkward, but he's so lovable. Okay. So he is the reporter on the case and is definitely a sidekick, but starting to get some benefits. So, they're just perfect together, but they're going to move pretty slow. But I enjoy writing Ben in because he's so cute. I think if there's anybody else I need to remember who is a sidekick, not so much in this book. I think those are the main ones.
I think
so. One of the things that I thought was interesting you mentioning, talking about the police officer who is a man of his time, and again, we're talking early 60s. So one of the things I'm curious about is, the research, and because we often think of, okay, for cozy mysteries or mysteries in general, thrillers, we're taught the research involves, how you're going to kill somebody. And so, but not only do you have that, you have the challenge of, bringing the past alive to us and making sure that you get it right. And there's a lot of challenge to that. So I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about what all you have done to bring in this book, 1962, alive for us.
This was difficult with the police because there just isn't, today you can get a book on police procedural things, but back then, not so much. I had, Kenney just passed away, an uncle who was a cop in 1962.
Oh, wow.
And so I called him on the phone, and he told me about, how the radios didn't work. How he's like, if people would have known how much in danger they were. So, but he not only helped me with some of the police questions, but he helped me with some other things. In a later book, I have to have Thanksgiving in 1963, and I'm like, what happened? What were you doing? And all this kind of stuff. So that helped me quite a bit. And then, I'm a writer. I'm on the internet. I'm looking up pictures. I'm looking up videos, and looking up crime scenes. That was pretty nasty. But but just trying to see some of these older crime scenes. Are they putting a big yellow tape around a body? Are they taking pictures? What are they doing? How are they doing it? Just trying to get it accurate. I probably am 70% correct.
Right.
I've always wondered with, at least when it comes to how before the advent of DNA and when, you could catch a killer just because they had touched something in somebody's house and there was touch DNA that linked them there, that I guess the framework, and especially maybe comparing it against the cozy mystery genre, which are anchored in the modern day that they're being written in. Um, is there a little bit more wiggle room uh, with how your sleuth is interacting either with the police or kind of with the crime scene or being able to, I guess, uh, uh, since the clues that we kind of know today aren't readily available, do you think it's easier to stage a crime scene in a historical context, or is it harder? And that might have been a very convoluted way of saying what my question is, so I apologize.
Well, for me personally, any crime scene I write is probably the most difficult part of the book.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Because I'm not a criminal. And so I think I with all of my books, I really have to write it and then rewrite it and try to analyze, does this seem right? I don't know if there is all that much difference because you still have an amateur sleuth in all of these instances, and they are only going to have access to so much information. So I don't know if there is more wiggle room. There certainly aren't so many easy answers, right? So.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, at least from, because your sleuth is also competing against the police, and I can imagine that in a historical context, it's a lot easier for the police to get the suspect wrong, but go all the way with them being wrong. So I'm always fascinated by, what the police task force is doing in conjunction with the amateur sleuth, because sometimes in a book they arrive at the same conclusion eventually, but other times it's like, whoo, we're off in different directions.
I think they were off in different directions. I really do. I don't think that they were. It seemed like that the real investigation was going on with Dot and Mary. So I think they were just kind of finding out afterwards. Oh, this is what happened. Okay.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit about the mystery itself? Because I don't want to spoil anything for folks, but I'll let you do the spoiler-free version of the murder.
Oh my God. All right. So as you said, Dot is trying to help her father's city council campaign. So she joins the ladies club. When she joins the ladies club, she is exposed to the Manning family. This is the DA, Morton Manning, and his wife, Barb Manning, and the DA's no good brother, Anson Manning. Okay. Anson is the family member that they keep trying to put him in different jobs, and he fails. He drinks too much. He carouses. The only thing good that he did was to marry his wife, who was a rancher's daughter. But Anson is just a mess. Again, going back to Hollywood, Anson is Bill Holden in my mind. Just that blonde guy, very handsome, but what a mess of a person. So once Dot starts getting into supporting her father in this campaign, she finds out that Anson has been put in as the opposing candidate, the candidate that's going to run against him. And because it is the Manning family and it's the DA, well, this is a done deal, right? He can just show up drunk and he's still going to get elected because that's how this is going to work. So it follows from there. Dot is involved in secretarial school, and she's trying to juggle secretarial school and making flowers for the ladies club and things like that. She has this horrible teacher. I just got to remember her name. You know, I think of the God bless you, please, Mrs. Robinson. So she has her teacher who kind of has a secret crush on somebody in the book, and that is a lot behind all of her motivations. Mm-hmm. And things just continually get worse and worse and worse for Dot, and for the people around her, for her father. And the more she digs into the murder, it seems like the more circumstances change around her, the more the other side is starting to manipulate the situation. So I think that's all I can tell you at this point.
It's a good teaser.
Yeah. Yeah. So since we're going to leave folks, hanging on that cliff, go buy the book, folks, The Twist and Shout Murder. Yeah, there it is. And that is, I'm stealing some of Sarah's thunder because she was going to comment about this, but I'm going to, about how fun that cover is and how it really seems to capture. Obviously, 1962 was a time like any time where there was a lot going on in our country and in the world. But that really, I think, so captures so well that early 1960s optimism, and it was still a time of innocence and things like that. So I want to know, along that line, why or how did you come about choosing the song Twist and Shout for the title?
When I started the series, I knew I wanted to have a popular song. And so I started going through lists of songs. I thought, what sounds like a murder? And I came up with Twist and Shout. And then, though, after I did it, I had to write the murder scene. And I was like, God, I'm gonna have to have a character twist and shout for this to work. And so I do remember rewriting that, going, turn this note, he turned that way, and it came this way. But that's how I did that. And then the next two books in the series, the next one is If I Had a Hammer, and the one after that is Listen, Do You Want to Know a Secret?
Ooh, nice.
The hammer one is obvious. That was easy for that murder scene. Mm-hmm. So it's really, if you really start looking at song titles from different years, you can come up with lots of murder themes.
Oh yeah. Well, and I also want
a way to do it too. Like, what a great title method.
Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to kind of tip my hat to you also for giving credit where credit is due, and making sure that folks know that that's an Isley Brothers song, because I know a lot of folks probably think of that as a Beatles tune, and it is, but the Isleys did it first, so good on you there.
Well, it surprised me. I was all ready to go with the Beatles, and then I went, maybe I should double check this. It wasn't the Beatles.
Yeah.
That's a very good segue, though, to Jim. You had mentioned that our viewers should go out and buy this book. Tonight, we do have one lucky viewer who will be able to receive a copy of The Twist and Shout Murder that Teresa is so generously donating to our giveaway this evening. And Teresa, would you like to tell folks what the magic word is for them to put into the YouTube chat to enter into our drawing?
It is the Beatles.
Perfect. So folks, make sure that you are logged into the YouTube chat. I can see that Grace and Jill have also joined us this evening. Thank you guys for joining. If you'd like to enter for a chance to win a copy of The Twist and Shout Murder, go ahead and put in the Beatles in the chat, and we will do our drawing at the end of the hour. But we're already halfway through, and time is flying.
Yeah. So, Teresa, one of the things that I do want to kind of give you a chance to talk about, you've written a lot of stories, a lot of mysteries. You've published a lot of books. So there is more to your bibliography than Twist and Shout Murder. Would you like to tell us a little bit about some of the other things you've written in the past?
Sure. So I am a hybrid writer, which means I started writing and self-publishing. I did that with my Pecan Bayou Mystery Series. I wrote 9 books in that series. But in the middle of writing that, I started traditionally publishing. So and then I have the Piney Woods series, which all of these series take place in Texas. So Pecan Bayou is Central Texas, Piney Woods is East Texas, and Swinging 60s is right above Dallas. So Piney Woods came out, and I wrote 3 books in that series, and now I'm doing Twist and Shout and the Swinging 60s.
How did you come up with the different, because you love writing cozy set or mysteries set in Texas. How did you come up with the different locations for each of the series?
It's because it started with Pecan Bayou, and I loved the Texas Hill Country, wanted to live there. I do not live in the country. I live in a great, great big city. And so I thought, oh, I want to live out there. It'd be so beautiful. So I wrote about that. And then when I thought about my next series, I thought, well, I don't want to keep writing about the Hill Country. So then I went out east because my husband's from Louisiana. And I could really see the influence of Louisiana on East Texas. And I thought, okay, that is a great, and the oil bust towns and all of that. I thought, okay, this is a completely different world on this side. And then, good thing working. So I thought, okay, let's go north this time. I probably will go to Corpus Christi after this, right?
Nice.
Well, yeah. Texas, it's got some room, so it's got some places you can go, and it's a fabulous place to visit. I've been fortunate enough to visit both Houston, the Houston area, as well as San Antonio, and it's just, it's amazing. It's an amazing part of the world.
And
it is.
Food.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I want to talk about food because I love food and I love reading about it. And so, Teresa, can you share some of the, I guess the most mouth-watering dishes that you've written about, and whether or not they taste as good as you write them?
Oh my gosh! All right. Well, for the Swinging 60s, there really is nothing truly mouth-watering in there because I would have to go back to menus. What would they serve? I was just looking, what would they serve at a wedding shower in the 60s? Buttermints. Oh, delicious. Not so much. Seriously, I was with my critique group, and I was reading this wedding shower scene, and they're like, it's all wrong. The food's all wrong. There needs to be, green punch and buttermints and, bleh. So the food has definitely improved since then. I really have written more about food in Pecan Bayou than any other book because my main character in that series is a helpful hints writer. She can't really cook great, but her aunt does. As a matter of fact, she has one book where she has to do something for creative cooks, and she's horrible at it. She makes this alligator, and it's terrible, because she reads it in a book. She's like, okay, I'll make this alligator, and the alligator looks like it's bleeding and all that kind of stuff. Her aunt makes a joke when she made a smiley face cake for her son that he had to go into therapy because the icing dripped.
Oh boy.
So I don't know if I have any good delicious recipes in the books. There's of course pecan pie that I've got in Pecan Bayou, but I'm thinking, but I'm not finding here. So
I think pecan pie. I hear the word pecan and I'm immediately thinking about pecan pie and delicious.
Yes, yes.
And we have
Yeah,
David chiming up in the chat, talking about what you had mentioned with the wedding shower, and he is adding that little sandwiches, punch, and cake
Yeah,
were
yeah,
yeah.
little sandwiches.
right.
So, Teresa, one of the other things that I think that really struck me with early on with the Twist and Shout murder is using fashion to really help set the scene. Okay,
Yes.
I'm totally not fashionable at all, but the way you describe, especially Dot, and the way some of her, some of the main characters, what they're wearing helps really, I think, drive home the fact that yes, I mean, it's shoot, 60 years ago people dressed very differently. Can you talk about your approach to why you chose to share so much about the various wardrobe choices and how that helped you set the scene, or if it did at all?
Oh, it definitely did. It definitely did. I love vintage fashion. So this was one of my favorite parts of researching for the book. I'm a sewer, and so man, I got all the patterns out that I could find, and I felt like people like Barb, people like Dot, they needed to look that time period. They just needed that very linen button down hats, bright colors, coordinated. That is just a part of that time. And when I have somebody in a ladies club, well, they're gonna dress quite well, because they consider themselves, high class. And so I just felt like it was such an important part. And in one scene, I purposely have Dot in a dress that isn't so new, because I've got her next to Barb. And I want her to feel inferior to her. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You could feel the tension coming from Barb's, or just like the judgment coming from Barb, just as she's looking at what Dot's wearing. And,
Yes.
as the reader, you're like, oh, like Dot's wearing a really a nice dress. Was it one that Ellie had made? Because Ellie does make some
Yeah,
of
I
her
think
clothes
so.
for her.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so she's very proud of her dress, and then in comes Barb with all of her attitude, and just how this woman was able to really unsettle Dot in a way, by just kind of like communicating through looks. Barb was super fierce, but oh man, would not want to cross her ever. She was terrifying.
No. No, and I felt like that was something that a lot of readers would identify with.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever gone to a party and you realize you're underdressed or you're overdressed, they're equally bad.
Yes.
Right. And so, you just like ready to go home because you don't look like the rest of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like it doesn't matter what decade you're in, you're going to identify with that.
And that's one of the things I think that's a really interesting point you bring up, is that, regardless of the time we live in, the reality of it is, we live in a class, or we live in a society in which there still are the classes. There's still the wealthy folks. There's still middle class folks. There's still folks who are struggling. And, Agatha Christie portrayed it in a certain way, and, here you are being able to portray it in a different way, through a different time period too. So, and obviously a different continent even. So I just thought that was really another tip of the hat to you, using fashion and some of those things to talk about really the not to get too, drive the topic, conversation too heavily here, but really to talk about the, kind of social disparities that were present during that time.
Yeah. And the thing is, Dot and her family are perfectly happy. They, they're middle class, and they, they love each other. They're happy. They're a family. So that I don't think was very important to them until he starts running for city council, and things are different. All of a sudden they're being judged all over the place, and people are pulling dirty tricks on them and stuff.
I think that's one of the reasons why reading historical, just any historical fiction, really can resonate so much with a present day reader, is because we're still seeing the same struggles, maybe played out in a different way, or played out in different extremes. But we're able to see, like, oh wow, like folks in the 60s were still dealing with the same issues that we're dealing with today. And I don't know if that's disheartening, that we haven't figured out a way to make things better, or if it's something that is universal to humans, and really draws us together, and are able to connect us through these time periods.
One of the wisest things my mother ever told me, and I think I've always kept this with me, when I was a young woman, and I'm like, oh, this is going on and that's going on. And she goes, stop. She says, everything that you are doing now, we did in the 50s. We just didn't talk about it all the time. I was like, oh, okay. She was like, we didn't have to talk out everything all the time. Right. And that just totally changed my perspective on her. Because, you're just, oh, you're from the 50s. Yes. No, it's just like now. Different clothes, but like now.
Well, and another, though, on the other side of the coin, trying to look at things a little more, optimistically, is, again, it shows that, the idea of the underdog amateur sleuth is universal time-wise. And so I guess one question that I have along that line, placing your amateur sleuth as a young woman in the early 60s, it's easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but women at that time were so oftentimes dismissed by men or by those in power. And while that was awful, I would think to a certain degree that could play to Dot's advantage.
Yes.
Because people may not be inclined to pay attention to her because she's this young single woman. Could you talk about that a little bit?
That is kind of her superpower, right? She is discounted all over the place until she isn't, which happens in this book. She's just this kid, move her out of the way. But she isn't. She's as smart as they are. And she can kind of operate under the radar because of this. And then she has Mary, who's helping her, who's doing the same thing. Because nobody values Mary's input either. So this is just a case of the brains are working, but nobody's noticing. So, yes.
I want to switch a little bit to your writing process, Teresa. You'd mentioned when it came to kind of the research that you did to set yourself in the 1960s, bringing out patterns, looking at photos, kind of going down the rabbit hole on the internet. When it comes to actually sitting down and writing a book, what is your kind of go-to strategy? Are you plotting? Are you writing by the seat of your pants? Do you have a detailed outline? How does a writing session look like for you?
I'm a plotter. I always have been.
Yay. Plotters unite.
Yes. I can't, but I have nothing against pantsters. I actually think pantsters are really smart people.
I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how they do it. I have to do this. This is remedial writing for me. I have to sit down. I have to think about it. I used to plot it from the very beginning to the end. Did that for years and years. But my problem would always be I'd get to the middle because I it's one thing to outline the scene, and another thing to start writing the scene, and then characters are starting to step forward, and plot movements are happening, and things are changing, and then I would have to change the rest of that outline. So now I'm plotting the first act, and then looking at it, plotting the second act, looking at it, and that seems to be working better for me. My husband always tells me every time I write a book, I'm building a better mousetrap, because no, this time I'm going to do it like this. Yes. And he's right. He's like, you never write the same way ever. So,
well, it just goes to show, there's no wrong way to write a book.
No.
It's whatever works for you is the way to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. It's whatever works for you, because what works for me may not work for somebody else, especially somebody who just can just let it flow, write it from beginning to end. Wow, you're amazing.
Yeah.
So
and speaking of which, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to ask the fact that you have your titles for books 2 and 3 selected. Do you know, like, I guess, was it the title that came first, or was it the murder or the circumstances around the murder, or whatever's going on in Dot's life, and then you were looking for titles that fit those circumstances?
The title came first.
Okay.
And because I was just going through the song lists and thought, oh yeah, okay. And then after that, for like, if I had a hammer, I started thinking about it, and I thought, okay, what job would have a hammer? Oh, she's working for a construction company. And then Listen, Do You Want to Know a Secret? That I had to come up. She's working in a radio station.
Oh.
And yeah, and that's so fun. And so for that book, my idea was I want every character, every main character, primary character, to have a secret. Everybody.
Ooh.
So I came up with the titles, and then I just started working with that. I need direction.
I think that's how that any book really starts, is you have a kernel that then grows to something. I guess it's a seed that grows to something more elaborate. And I just love that it's the title, because that is such a unique way to frame an entire mystery.
It works for me. Just to, I can start out and say, okay, this is what I'm writing about. Now, how am I going to write about it?
So along that line, I don't think we've had a chance to ask you, how did you get into writing? Can you tell us about, like, going back, to the beginning? How'd you get into this crazy gig?
When I was 49, I all my life had wanted to be a writer. I was an English teacher. I was a mom. I did all kinds of things. I wanted to be a writer, but I was busy. And sitting there before my 49th birthday going, if I don't do this, I'm going to have regrets. If I don't at least try. And if I'm going to try, that means I need to have a little discipline, have a little commitment, start learning about this craft. And so I actually got this book called How to Write a Mystery in 52 Weekends.
Oh, wow.
I did.
That is direction. That is.
Yeah. And so I got the book, and I started, it was wonderful because it broke everything down. And they said, okay, weekend 1, you're going to write about your main character. And then they gave me all these things to write about. Weekend 2, you're going to write about your villain. And then you're going to write about your crime scene. And so it broke it down into 52 weekends.
Wow.
I had the book finished and everything written in about 3 months.
Nice.
And from there, I started writing, because that was like the very first outline I ever made. And that was where I learned, hey, I am a plotter. I need someone helping me out, holding my hand. That's why I love the internet. You can take a class in anything these days. Well, that was, and that was how I get started. And I wrote, my first book was called A Dash of Murder, and I wrote A Dash of Murder from that book.
Oh, wow.
That's really cool.
I needed that when I was younger, I was writing so many chapter ones and chapter twos and just never got
Ah,
anywhere else because I thought that a writer had the whole story inside their head and they could sit down and write it all out. But no, you need, at least I needed to know day by day what the heck my characters were doing because otherwise it's like, how am I going to get them from the opening scene to the end scene?
yeah, you just structure is good.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that brings up a topic that I'm sad to bring up, structure being that we only have an hour, and that means we only have 15 minutes left. Boo hiss, because Teresa, this has been fabulous. Do want to remind folks, since we've only got a little bit of time left, that if you haven't done so yet, Teresa is being kind enough to give away a copy of Twist and Shout Murder to somebody who puts the special secret magic word into the chat. And Teresa, would you mind reminding folks what that word is or what that phrase is?
The Beatles.
The Beatles. I think I may have heard of them once or twice. They were kind of this okay band from someplace in England, right?
Right. That's what I heard.
Yeah. That group that Paul McCartney was in before he got famous. Well,
Yeah, they had the hair. Yeah, I remember.
yeah.
Now, Teresa, are you going to be at any? Can our fans that are both writers and readers, are they going to be able to see you at any conferences this year? Are you doing any upcoming events that we can share, or where can our readers connect with you once our hour wraps?
Okay, I will be at Malice Domestic.
Yay!
Yay.
When is that? Last weekend in April?
Yes, I think so.
23rd.
Yeah, late April.
24th?
Mhm.
Yes. So they can see me there. Locally, I am teaching a class at a library here in
wow.
Houston.
Mhm.
Very cool.
Another writer, Terry Korth Fisher, we're both mystery writers, and we've been teaching these little classes at this library, and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's really cool.
That's fun.
My website is teresatrent.com. My blog is teresatrent.blog, but it's called Books to the Ceiling. I also have a podcast, which is Books to the Ceiling. And so they can find me on my blog. I like to promote other authors' works, so they can read about different books. Jim, you've been on my blog, I think.
I have. Yes,
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah. You need to come back with your next one. Anyway,
I'm working on that, getting closer.
all right. But I have a podcast, and I love to read other people's books. It's so fun. So they can find me there. I am on Facebook. I have to write this down because I have a couple of Facebook pages. I think it's Teresa Trent Mystery Writer. I'm on Twitter at Trent Cozy Miss. Trent _ Cozy Miss, and if Miss is spelled MYS. And I'm on Instagram at Teresa Trent _ Cozy Miss MYS. I think that's everything.
That you
Nice.
have that all memorized. I'm just like, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. It's like, I don't even know what my usernames are anymore.
I don't know. I'm on the internet.
You'll find me.
Well, that's great.
Right.
It sounds like there are a lot of opportunities for our viewers to follow up with you and keep apprised to what's next for Dot. Any chance that you can tease a little bit more about what's happening in book 2? I guess without giving away too much of book 1.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. Book 2 comes out March 14th.
Oh, wow. Very
So it's
close.
Yay.
We're going to get there
Woo.
close.
Yes. So, like I said, Dot is working for a construction company, but that book starts in 1963. So I had to pull a date out. And so it actually starts when they go to see John F. Kennedy visit Dallas.
Oh,
So-
wow.
Yeah, I know. This is why I get in trouble as a cozy mystery writer, because I forget to be cozy sometimes.
mhm.
You know? So they go to Dallas. I really wanted to examine, this is kind of like after 9/11, how people change when they see something like this.
Mhm.
So I put Dot and Ellie on the grassy knoll. I purposely gave Dot an Instamatic camera. So she's looking down and winding, right? Remember those old cameras? You don't remember.
I do.
You're so young. You have to wind them between so that you move the film around so it'll get the next exposure or whatever. So she's doing that when JFK and Jackie drive by, but Ellie is looking straight on.
Oh.
So that character goes through so much because she just, her mind blows up about everything anyway. So that way I could kind of put Dot back a little bit. So I start with that, and then they go into the story that is going to be the mystery, where Dot is working for this construction company, and they are doing the latest thing in retail. It's called a strip mall, and they're taking down. Oh, that's right. No, nobody's stripping, and they're taking down these little rental houses that were like oil field workers' houses, and of course, what happens when you dig in the dirt in a mystery? Think about it. So they start unearthing clues, and there is a murder. And meanwhile, while all of this is going on, Ellie is going through big life changes because she's seen this thing. And so I've got those two stories running together. And so Dot is in more danger in this book, for sure. And I get to pull out fun little devices like dictaphones. Yeah.
Cool.
It's really fun to try to use that in picking up clues. But because I'm thinking, would this really work? I think it would.
Yeah.
So that's
well, I got chills. I got chills hearing about that. So very excited for March 14th.
Good.
Was that March 14th?
Yes.
Perfect. Mark your calendars,
Well,
everybody.
Cool. Well, unfortunately, God, I feel like such the meanie here because our time is running short. But I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. This has been a lot of fun. Teresa, you are totally fabulous. It is time to kind of wrap up a little bit with our usual ending segment. What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you reading? So kind of what are you consuming as far as media goes? So I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm going to go first this time because normally I put the onus on y'all. And this is kind of tough to see, but this is my current read. This is Sarah's Harrowed Air. This is from her Court of Mysteries series. And the reason I wanted to mention it is that, I love this series. I love her fantasy writing, and it's so cool because there are, I don't even know how many books there are in the series anymore, Sarah, but it's a mystery wrapped in fantasy. And as somebody who grew up loving Tolkien and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's just a lot of fun to read it, and it gets me that whole cozy mystery, not really cozy mystery, but mystery problem solver sleuthing kind of stuff. So you got to check out the Court of Mystery novels, folks. They're fabulous. And Harrowed Air is the one I'm reading right now. So that's what I'm reading. And what I'm watching in between two things, wrapping up I've got 3 episodes left of The Glades, which is a mystery series originally on A&E that's on Hulu now. Sarah turned me on to it, and it has been so much fun to read that. And I just watched the first couple episodes of Will Trent, which is a new series that is that's also on Hulu. So and that's based on a Karen Slaughter series, I guess. So that's kind of what I'm watching. So Teresa, how about you?
Okay, I got to talk about Will Trent. I just started watching that too. I like that character. I think that there was an old mystery or an old radio series that might have come from Will Trent, because of course I noticed the name Trent.
Really?
Things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it might have come even before. Karen Slaughter probably wrote this, but I'm saying I think that there was something.
Okay. Nice.
So I am reading Lisa Wingate, A Month of Summer, which I really like because one of the characters has a special needs adult son, and I can really relate with things that she's going through.
Hmm.
We just started watching. Well, first, the best thing I've seen in a long time was Julia, which is probably old, but it is. God, what is Julia on? Uh, it is about Julia Child
Oh,
back
okay.
in this
Hmm.
same time
Oh
period,
yeah. Okay.
and it's about the beginning of her television series.
Hmm.
The lady that plays Julia is in Happy Valley,
Okay.
big, tall, blonde lady in Happy Valley. Very good. But her husband is David Hyde Pierce, and
Oh,
he is
fun.
excellent. He is so incredible. And let's see if I get her name right. Lilith, Phoebe Newirth,
Oh,
Yeah.
is
BB.
also
Hmm.
Hmm.
in it.
I love BB North.
And they have David Hyde Pierce and Phoebe Newirth doing what they do best, just kind of riffing off of each other. And oh, we loved Julia. We just finished that, and
Hmm.
yeah, if you liked Mrs. Maisel, right, you will like Julia because it's from that same time period, and very very enjoyable series.
That is the
Awesome.
great recommendation. I will
Yes.
have to check both of those out. I've heard a lot about Will Trent, and it's been popping up on my feed, so I definitely have that in my to watch. Once I'm done, I have been binge watching My Life is Murder. During our last episode, I had talked about whether I'm supposed to do Acorn or BritBox, and I was like, oh, I'm doing them both right now.
Hmm.
And My Life is Murder is on Acorn. I love Lucy Lawless. I
Yes.
just love her, and she is such a star. I'm on season 2 already. Very much enjoying the mysteries. They're very joyful. One thing that was kind of shocking is the series starts out in Melbourne, but then it
Hmm.
switches to Auckland, New Zealand, and the reason why is because for COVID, in order to keep filming, because their principal cast were living in New Zealand, they had to change the whole kind of format of the show to accommodate this,
Hmm.
and they've done it really nicely. I really love it. It's absolutely stunning scenery. We just got done watching an episode about wineries, and I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. As for what I'm reading, I am like so in the throes of actually writing my next book that the only thing that I've really been reading is my emotion thesaurus. And for our viewers who are either thinking about writing or are currently writing, I absolutely love this book. I actually have a couple from the series. It's called A Writer's Guide to Character Expression. I don't know about you, but like my characters are always sighing or rolling their eyes, and it's like I need more of what they're doing. And so the emotion thesaurus really helps me channel different things because unfortunately there's not a font for sarcasm. Um, so being able to convey all of the sarcasticness that my characters are quipping about, this really helps. So it's a great writing tool, but it's also really just fun to like peruse. Like, oh, I never thought about that before. So that's my my little
Nice.
tidbit. But I also have to geek out, JC, about you speaking about Tolkien and Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe, and then speaking about my books. So that's like amazing, and I'll just like have warm fuzzies for the rest of the probably the month for that.
But it's true. Besides, I got this one on paperback and I'm not there yet. So I've got to get there so I can read this one here. So, not that, and Teresa, I'm sorry, tonight's about you, but,
No, no, no,
we're
no.
all in
Don't
this
worry about
together.
that.
And so, it's a lot of fun. So, folks, read Teresa's books, read Sarah's books. Hey, even read my books if you
Read
want.
JC's books. Yes, we're
Yeah,
here. We're here to lift everyone up, and we have
right.
a copy of Teresa's books to give away this evening. And
Hmm.
if we hold, well, actually, we don't have to hold for applause, but our winner this evening. Let me do our fabulous little random number generator. Our winner
And my
is
tabletop drumming here.
our viewer, David Plank. David, congratulations.
Hey, hi, David. Woo! You're
If
in for a treat, dude.
you are, we will, if you can, let me go ahead and put our email information in. If you can send your mailing address to giveaways at the Bookish Hour. gmail.com. We will forward your information on to Teresa. Congratulations. And to those of you who joined us here live, thank you so much for sharing an hour of your time with us. It's always a great chance to catch up with everyone and really enjoy our bookish community. Teresa, thank you so much for being here with us and spending time telling us all about Dot and the fabulous world of Camden, Texas, and the Twist and Shout murder. And we are very
Yes.
much looking forward to March 14th when we get to see Dot back in action. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will see everyone back here for our next episode, February 9th. So until then, have a wonderful rest of the evening and happy weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.
Thanks, folks.